One. Hello, YouTube. I am M. Holcomb, and this is Cad the Cad.
Howdy.
We are going to be doing patch talks, focused specifically on Diablo 3, League of Legends, and Smite. Right now, the first episode is going to be on Diablo 3 because it's the next patch, and we missed the Smite patch a couple days ago. But, yeah. And we might do other games, but exclusively it's going to be Diablo 3, League of Legends, and Smite. So let's dive right in. And the 2.1 patch of Diablo 3, I personally think that the monks and demon hunters are going to get top tier, especially because of demon hunters, since they don't have to sit down and cross their fingers and pray to God that they dodge those enemy attacks. Now that they can actually survive them. But what do you think, Cad?
I think the change to dexterity from dodge chance to armor is going to be hugely beneficial. However, more so for the monks than the demon hunters, because the monks are really the ones that are tanking, so that dodge chance being not quite as reliable than armor is going to make them a whole lot more of a reliable tank. However, with demon hunters, I mean, yes, they're going to benefit, but the fact that you're a demon hunter means you shouldn't be on the front lines all too much, and you probably don't want to be taking damage regardless of what it's coming from. So, I mean, yeah, it'll be beneficial, but just not as much so as the monks. As far as placing them in the top tier, I mean, the monks might go up a little bit, again, because of the fact that it's becoming armor instead of a chance that you won't take damage, or a chance that you'll dodge. I mean, yeah, they might go up a little bit. The demon hunters, I think, are just going to be, they're going to be able to survive a little bit more because of the resistances, more so than resistances than armor. I mean, plague, thunderstorm, desecration, that always hurts just about anybody. And, you come in an elite pack that's got waller, jailer, desecration, if you're a demon hunter, as soon as you see that purple circle around you, you're just like, well, I'm F.
Alright. I think that's going to be really good, too. Those are good points, but from classes that me and you love to play together, conceptually, or at the same time, Crusader, their active skill, Phalanx, the avatar run speeds are being increased a whole 100%. So they're running at 200% speed, and that's about it. That's what they're changing. What do you think about that?
Well, I know they have the legendary item that, makes Phalanx a viable option to use because it, makes them, I believe it makes them stick around the Phalanx the Phalanx ability, I believe it makes them stick around, or it does something where you attack and it creates the Phalanx avatar or something like that. So, I mean, it's already a viable ability as long as you have that legendary item. So I think the fact that they're changing that is going to be a huge buff for that build specifically, because I know in some previous patches they knocked out the hammer build that just about every Crusader was using.
Well, I mean, I still run hammers, but that's because I have found a way to build life on hit hammers, which means I'll just infinitely sustain out, and then just deal those crits from a range.
I mean, yeah, just about every Crusader was using hammer build because of, Blessed Hammer was kind of insane, especially with Thunder Rune, but, it got nerfed a little bit. So did I build, which is kind of depressing. I'm still sad about that. But, you just have to adapt, and I think with that change, the Phalanx build is coming up a little bit stronger, and you'll have that variety instead of having to use that legendary item. You can actually have a Phalanx build that is slightly decent, more so than it is right now.
Yeah. Now, Demon Hunters, as I'm looking through the patch here, and as other people can see as I'm looking through the patch here, there's a lot that got changed. Like Cluster Arrow, the Maelstrom rune. The damage went up, and it went from physical to cold damage. That means, so, already a freezing Demon Hunter seems viable, and then there's the shooting stars, which the rocket that shoots out from the explosion was increased from 400% weapon damage to 600% damage. Like that's huge.
Yeah, it is, especially considering the fact that ballistics is a thing. So already having rockets increase damage, and then you're buffing a rune that has rockets on it, where the rocket does even more damage. I felt like that's almost not necessary. Um, I mean, you have all these other abilities that are getting increased, and that's all fine and dandy. But increasing a rune that does rocket damage, and I mean, we're seeing it all over the place. Multi-shot arsenals getting increased.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. I just don't think that's really necessary because of the amount of damage it already does, and just with the fact that you have builds where you have your Marauder pet build, where you have your sentry turret expending hatred to use some of those abilities, and then Spitfire turret increased damage. I mean, the amount of damage that ballistics build is going to have is just going to be insane now. And I know Demon Hunter is supposed to deal out tons of damage, but I just feel like an increase of the ballistics build is just not necessary right now.
Yeah. What do you think about the shadow power though? Because shadow power, fell out due to the fact of we lost all that lifesteal because it's no longer life or hit or lifesteal; it's something else. But gloom, which used to be your main lifesteal, you would pop that and just sit there and tank waves. What do you think about the fact that the fact that now the damage reduction's increased? Do you think that's going to be part of the sentry builds that you've been talking about right now?
Possibly. I know the Sentry build, if you have that legendary item, because again, Diablo 3 right now is all about the legendary items, and if you have that specific one, you almost have to use that build because it's just so worth it. But if you don't, I could see Gloom definitely being part of the build. For me, damage reduction is usually not a thing I used on Demon Hunter. Because like I said way back when, I'm trying to not even be hit. I'm just tumbling away from things. So it's normally life regeneration or life on hit or life steal or whatever. And I know the changes now, they're making them to the health globes where it's more focused on that. I mean, I'm just going to try to stick with that. Just stick with the life on hit, life steal, life regeneration. Damage reduction for me is not a huge thing. So I probably won't use it. As far as the Sentry build, the idea of having that Sentry out there is so it's more in the front lines than you are. So again, damage reduction, not a huge deal.
Let's see what else. Vault's getting a buff on its rune acrobatics, which I can't think of what the rune does off the top of my head. But the mere fact that they felt they needed to nerf it, do you think that's going to be viable in any kind of build up coming up?
Well, actually, to correct you, they buffed it. What happened is Acrobatics Rune gets rid of the discipline cost of Vault and then just gives it a cooldown. So instead of just being able to cast it as much as you want until you run out of discipline, you have one cast, but it's free, and then it's on an 8-second cooldown. So I actually definitely was wondering when they were going to put this nerf or this buff into play, because literally nobody uses Acrobatics as far as I know. Because having a cooldown on your escape skill, whenever you could opt out to have, I don't know, the action roll or tumble, where you get a second free vault roll, or on the action rune that gives you crits as you're flying through the air. I mean, I love that one personally, because why not get out of the escape and possibly take down that dude that's trying to kill you in the process? But acrobatics for me, I have never been one to use it because, like I said, Vault is generally I should say 100% of the time that's what Demon Hunter use as they get out of jail 3 card, and Tumble is like the number one rune because why would you not want to have an extra cast of it that's like half the cost? So definitely a buff to acrobatics is probably needed. At the same time, I still don't see why anybody's really going to use it unless you have some sort of other rune build set up that makes the cooldown go even lower or something.
Huh. Alright, well, moving on from Demon Hunter, because there's not really any other focal points you want to talk that are really, there. Let's move on to Monk, the next one down. I like the Crippling Wave buffs that I'm seeing. Definitely, especially the fact that Crippling Wave isn't a really, preferred skill at this point in time in Diablo, just due to the fact that you don't really, especially in rift runs, which we'll get to the new rifts later in the talks, but like with rift runs, you don't want enemies coming at you. You want enemies to be pushed away, and Crippling Wave likes to bring them closer. So having some kind of reward for the fact that you just brought all your enemies to you, I like all the damage buffs. I definitely like the Rising Tide one. The critical hits. Monks love crits, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that. I like the fact that it's returning spirit. You have a spirit return, so I'm gonna Crippling Wave and just hit you with a couple auto attacks. I like that, but I want to hear your opinions on all these changes on Crippling Wave.
Well, I'm not a huge monk player right now. I've really been focusing on my witch doctor and trying to get my wizard and demon hunter up to speed. So I haven't visited monk in quite a while. But crippling, what were we on crippling wave?
What? I'm sorry?
Let's go on crippling wave, right? Yeah, crippling wave. I mean, yeah, that's actually, I do remember that's one I don't actually normally use, to be perfectly honest. Normally I'm sticking with, normally as one of the other primaries, as one of my primary resource recovery moves, Thunderclap, and sometimes Wave with 1,000 Fists. But Crippling Wave is not actually one that I normally use. It's an alright one, if you like that extra little CC that it gives you. So I mean, I guess an increase to damage was sort of needed, in a little bit, but not a huge amount. It is more for, that's something that a more tankier monk would use, because I'm more of the damage dealer one. I run through solo, do some damage with some Cyclone Strike and stuff like that. But yeah, Crippling Wave is not one that I normally use, so the changes, I don't have a huge opinion on those. I mean, I think some of the buffs were necessary, just not a whole lot. It looks like they didn't buff them too much, so I think that's sort of more of a balance rather than just needing to be buffed.
Moving down, as you read through, Fist of Thunder is changing. First and second hits are getting buffed, and then the third is also being buffed a lot. Like, wow, like the whole entire thing about Fist of Thunder right now are just seem to be getting buffed. Like all the primaries, all the major monk skills that are being used right now, just seem to be getting these massive buffs. And I don't know if I can say that I like it because of this next patch, or if I'm gonna be playing monk more because of it, or if I'm just gonna sit there and be like, I'll just stick to my Crusader Barb. Wizard, like I normally do. But I don't know if you have any opinions on that fact either.
Well, it's actually kind of curious, because if you think the dexterity is changing, it's giving you armor instead of dodge chance at the same time. If you look at the scaling, it's not giving you a huge increase in armor from the dodge chance. So my guess is they're thinking they need to buff the damage out to compensate for the loss of dodge chance that you're having. Because while that wasn't 100% reliable, whenever it did activate and you did dodge, that's just a full dodge that you got. You dodged that ability completely, so you just took 0 damage because you dodged it, whereas armor is just going to be reducing damage. It's a consistent reduction, but you will be taking damage. You won't be dodging anymore. So my guess with them buffing all of these abilities is just to compensate for the fact that, yes, we're giving you a more reliable defense, but at the same time, it's not going to just give you that quick and easy get-out-of-jail-free card save that might happen every now and then. And, then you can keep on tanking and, randomly dodge those 3 moves to get that cooldown of, Serenity or whatever it is that you needed to survive. So you need to buff some of your damaging abilities so you're killing them while you're sustaining yourself.
But as I was looking through, the passive skills have been nerfed and removed, especially the big one with everything. If for those who don't know, or for those who don't play monks, one with everything was a major monk skill for helping them tanking, because it took their highest resistance, just resistance. You focus one resistance, and you just all that's all you do, and then makes all their other resistances that level for free. And they're removing it and adding a new one called Harmony. And that is, they add 30% of your single elemental resistances from items. Instead, increase your resistance to all elements. So that means if you have a bunch of fire resistance on all your items, that now becomes all resist. Which is good, but with everything removed, are we going to see less monk survivability? Or are we going to actually see more of a bursty build now that the fact that they can't be as reliable as tanks anymore?
No, I wouldn't say that entirely because if you think about it, what they did is instead of making to where you could just strictly build dexterity and not even have to, you basically could throw resistances on items out the window essentially almost because one with everything, it makes your highest resistance. That resistance is for everything else. With the dexterity change, it not only increases your armor, but all of your resistances as well. So, you could build those items, you can have those items that have one type of resistance, so that's boosted that one resistance up, and now also your dexterity is getting a huge increase to your resistances. So one with everything, it would have been buffed from those changes. So changing it to this passive is actually smart on their part, because now you still have to have those items that give you, huge amounts of single item resistances. And with the change, even though it's 30%, you're still going to see that tankiness. Now, how much change how much they are changing, or I'm not going to do the math in my head right now, but 30%, that's not a huge amount. So you're going to want to look for those huge amounts of resistances, of single resistances on items that you still have all of your other resistances up. Because while they are changing the dexterity to give you more resistances, that's just not going to compensate for all of what one with everything did. So you're just going to have to play a little smarter in your goals with your items and your drops with your loot. You're just going to have to look for those high resistances. That's going to be a little bit more important than just get a bunch of items with one type of resistance and then one with everything and you're fine.
Yeah. Another passive they're removing and then changing and calling it something else is Provocation, which I believe I do use Provocation on my monk, which is it reduces the crowd controlling effects, so CC effects of on you by 25%, which is huge because Jailer, Freeze, Charm, Stuns, Mobilize, Fears, all those that you fight in Diablo disappear. The blinds even are gone, right? They're just gone. They get lowered. And then you get increased damage for whenever you get hit by one of those for 10 seconds. Which is ridiculous because you not only lower the chance, you lower the duration, which means more CC you can put out faster, but you do more damage. You just deal more to their face. And what it's being changed with is called Determination, which is damage is increased by 4% for each enemy within 12 yards up to a maximum of 20%, which I don't like the fact that they're removing that. I thought Provocation was fine, even with all these buffs, just because of the fact that you're now a tank, you kind of don't want to be CC'd for longer. You want to kind of break the CC faster with, with Provocation, with DC reduction items if you happen to have them on your gear. And then just dealing more damage was nice. But just getting more damage for more enemies near you, that's like saying shoot myself in the foot, but it's also a good thing.
Well, I think what they're trying to do here is, again, compensate for the fact that, because they obviously think that the dexterity change is going to be a huge buff to defense, and especially the monks, because not only do monks already build some dexterity for some damage and survivability, but they're giving them armor. They're giving them a reliable, consistent defense. So taking the defensive traits off of Provocation and essentially slightly modifying the damage on Provocation and turning it into this new passive called Determination, they're thinking, well, they're going to be tanking, they're going to be surrounded by enemies almost at all times, at least they should be for their role, and they're a melee character, so you're going to be next to somebody at all times, so you're going to have a constant damage increase. So you're technically keeping that Provocation damage increase, at least in some way. You're just getting rid of the defense from it, which I think was necessary, because obviously I mean, obviously the patch hasn't come out yet, and we haven't seen what this dexterity changes is going to do. But evidently, Blizzard seems pretty confident with the fact that it's going to increase the defense by quite enough to where compensation is actually getting rid of the previous defensive traits of provocation.
Huh. Uh, and now that goes on to my next point of the new passive that's coming out called Relentless Assault, which is simply you'll deal 20% more damage to enemies that are blind, frozen, or stunned. Which there's not a whole lot of things in current builds and meta of rift runs or builds that do a whole lot of blinds, frozens, or stuns outside of monks. So are they required? Even right now, monks don't use it. I mean, I know I use the lashing tail kick monk, which is all I do is just kick you. I don't actually want to CC you. I just want to kick you. I want to do more damage so I live and you don't. And I don't know if they're thinking, oh hey, with all these changes, people are going to want more CC, or if they're just thinking we're just going to give them more damage for the times that they do become frozen, stunned, or blind.
Okay, so this one's actually a very interesting passive in my opinion. First thing to look at is it's available at level 30, so it's not supposed to be considered a super high level, amazing passive, that you get for, reaching above and beyond and finally getting into those 60s. However, at level 30, you're really reaching, semi twilight, your peak of what you can do with your skills. And so that's something interesting to consider because that means Blizzard thinks this is actually going to be a pretty interesting, powerful passive. And in my opinion, I think it is a very powerful passive. So let's break it down. 20% more damage. That is 1/5 of 100%. So that means you are dealing, if you're dealing 100 damage, you're dealing 120 damage. Now you put that into big numbers, that's a lot of extra damage. If you're critting for 1,000,000, you're critting for 1,020,000 more damage. That's a lot of damage. That adds up. The next thing to look at is it's a passive. You don't have, there's no stipulations. You just deal that much more damage. That means everything you do is dealing that much more damage. Your passive attacks, your abilities, everything you do. The next thing to look at is the CC. Blind, frozen, or stunned. So, blind, frozen, or stunned is not a huge, thing. Except for blind, frozen and stunned are very rare occurrences on the monk alone. But if you think about it, generally Diablo 3 you're going to be in parties. Optimally you want to be in the party. Monk is more of the support tank. Get in there, rough them up, tear them up, disrupt them, all that kind of stuff. So maybe they're thinking it's not really going to be you dealing the CC. So once you get in there and you have those other teammates that are CCing them, you're going to start really hitting them pretty hard after that sustained fight. Because that's the other thing that monks do is they really sustain fight, especially if they're alone. They have to sustain fight to get those crits off. I like sweeping wind. That's one of my big damage dealers. So that sustained fight. Which brings me to the next point: is blind is one of the CCs. And if you recall, the monk can actually blind. He's got a ability called Blinding Light that not only blinds the surrounding enemies, but also heals them, which is a hugely important skill. If, for my monk especially, you like to do those solo damage deals. So basically what this skill is going to do is, on top of making my crits just destroy in waves and everything like that, it's going to make it to whenever I heal, not only will I CC everybody and heal myself, but then I'm going to be, after I do that, optimally I'll be crushing the person that, I just blinded. So when I go into those elite packs, they're going to be dying, 20% faster.
Well, I seem to have forgotten, but what do you take this from a brawler standpoint, a PvP standpoint? Do you think that these monk changes are going to be great if people decide, hey, I'm going to... Because there are groups dedicated to that. They just go in and brawl. They go in and fight each other. Do you think that with the changes, monks gonna like it more? Because I know there's not a whole lot of those kind of people around, and I know Crusaders are out of the question because Crusaders are too new, and so pretty much it's being dominated by Witch Doctor, Wizards, and Barbarians, and you don't see monks.
Most definitely, actually, because of the Reaper Souls change, where you have a fourth item, or I'm sorry, fourth passive slot, I could see people running one with everything, determination, relentless assault, and then one other themed or build friendly passive in there. Then you have those two damage dealers, and preferably that other fourth one's going to be some sort of defensive passive. And you have your resistances, you have your defense, and then you have two damage dealers where you're just going to thunderclap right on top of them, blind if you need that heal yet, and then you're dealing tons of damage because that's 24% extra damage that you're dealing. And if there's anybody else around you, you just blinded them too, healing yourself, and you get even more damage. And since you're a monk, you got that dexterity, you're going to be critting like nobody's business.
Huh. Alright. Well...
I'm not saying that they're going to go to top tier, but I definitely think they're going to be able to hold their own a little bit more.
Well, I want to move on to, now that you mentioned with Reaper of Souls, there's a new item from Infernal Machines called Infernal Amulet, right? It randomly rolls a passive for the class that you forge it on.
Just a quick interjection here, that's Hellfire Amulet. It's Infernal Machine, new what is Hellfire Amulet.
Yes, I'm sorry. It's Hellfire Amulet. And it rolls essentially a fifth passive that's just random. But you don't know what the passive's going to be, but it rolls a fifth passive. So you could get one of the same passives, but that means you get an extra slot to say, oh, hey, I always wanted to try this, but I needed this passive instead. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm really hoping that there's a chance that they make it to where you can't re-roll a passive you already have. However, if that is the case, I would hope that the passive actually does something for you. For example, if you roll the passive
I think you're misunderstanding. It rolls one of your class passives.
No, I understand that. What I meant was, say I got my Witch Doctor, for example. The build that I'm running right now, it's software, of course. The build that I'm running right now is it's a pet build, essentially. I have 3 passives that give me extra zombie dog per passive, and then a 4th passive that gives me, it's called Fetish Sycophant. Every time I attack, there's a 10% chance to summon another fetish that sticks around for 60 seconds. So if I were to roll one of those passives, I would at least hope that it still has its effect. So, for example, if I rolled one of my 3 passives that gives me a zombie dog, among other things, I would hope I now get an extra zombie dog, so I can have a total of 7. Or if it rolls the Fetish Sycophant passive, I would hope there's now a 20% chance that it gets me, a fetish every time I attack. While that does seem a little bit overpowered, if you think about it, considering some of the passives that some classes can run, I would hope that it does something like that. Or, like I said first, I think the better option would be to roll a passive that you aren't currently using. I think that would be more beneficial.
Huh. Alright, moving on from Amulet to class again. Well, I'm kind of bouncing around here, but Witch Doctor. They lowered pretty much all the collision boxes, so how close you can be to your pets as before you have to stop in place. And they lowered them because I know I watched several Witch Doctors just doing Rift It Forward and Rift runs just with random people, that they were getting angry, especially in chat, because their own dogs or gargantuan or fetish army would kill them because there's so much around them that they can't move out of that, like the frozen, the arcane enchanted, the poison enchanted, the jailer, all that stuff. They can't move because there's just so much around them. So I think it's a great change that they're lowering that, so it's like, oh hey, I can finally duck and weave through them.
I would 100% agree. It is a little bit depressing because I don't know how much that's going to affect me swarming around one elite that I trap in a corner with my fetish army, zombie dogs and gargantuan, and that was always fun. But at the same time, I would completely agree with you, and I can see the applications in PvP where it's just a little overpowered to basically corner somebody with your pets to where they can't move, because unless you're like a Dune Hunter or a lizard that can tell you if vault out, you're going to have a little bit of a hard time.
Now, I want to make sure people who are listening in, who are watching the video right now, this is collision boxes. This is not their avatar or hitbox. This is not their model or hitboxes. This just means that you can be closer to your pet as you walk by now than than before. So you still are hit the same. You can still use them to block attacks. You can still use them as meat shields, but but that just means that when things go past them, they can move closer to them without being directly on top of them. And that's just to clear something up, because I know some people who aren't familiar with who aren't familiar with patches and stuff do that, who assume that, oh hey, now their model and hitboxes are reduced. No, it's just their collision boxes, which means now you can get closer to the pets. That's it. But to the skills, corpse spiders are getting buffed. A large amount of the rooms actually, especially Spider Queen. Spider Queen got a huge buff. Remember when we were first playing Diablo 3, you were like, I want to use Spider Queen because it does a lot of damage.
It was a pretty excellent rune, if I do say so myself. For those of you watching or listening or what have you, what it doesn't actually show is the Spider Queen is actually a summon, not just a quick little jar breaks. Spiders jump out, they do their stuff, and they're done. Spider Queen actually summons a giant spider that is basically hatching little ones, and it walks around dealing that damage. It doesn't deal that 625% damage in 1 second. What it does is it deals it over approximately 16 seconds. So while it's not quite as powerful as you might think at first glance, it is a pretty decimating rune to have on corpse spiders, because you can throw, while you can only have one out at a time, you can have that damage going continuously through an entire fight, because as soon as it dies, you can just simply throw another one, and the mana cost is next to nothing.
It doesn't, but if I remember right, Spider Queen doesn't last but, 2-3 seconds max?
No, it actually lasts closer to 8 seconds. 8 or 16, I'm sorry. It actually lasts about 16 seconds. You can cast Piranha twice in the life of a Spider Queen. So generally one of my combos is to Piranha and throw a Spider Queen on top of it, because another interesting fact that I'd like to note is with Better Sycophant, Spider Queen attacks per second, and I can use that and darts at the same time. So if I have a Spider Queen, Piranha, and darts all going at the same time, the amount of fetishes I can summon actually increases by quite a huge percent, because while it's only 10% per attack, I'm attacking several times a second with the amount of abilities that I can use that deal damage over time.
Fetish Army got a change on one of their runes. Fetish Ambush?
One more thing I'd like to add.
Alright.
Is the legendary item that I can't think of what it's called. It's a mask. It allows you to soul harvest and blow up all of your current damage over time abilities into one explosion instead of having them deal damage over time. I'm not sure exactly how that interacts with Spider Queen. I've never been able to test it, but if it does do something like that, I can't imagine the amount of damage you'd be able to do. So the increase to Spider Queen's damage, if you combo that with, say, a Locust Swarm in the rune, that increases the damage to over 2,000%. That's quite a bit of damage you're doing if you have that legendary item.
Yes, I don't know. I still like Carnivals with the whole thing of fetishes shoot your poison darts.
Oh, I completely agree.
I would take that over what you're talking about, but I do see the amount of damage you can do with the mask, though.
Actually, the only interesting thing to note about Carnivals is while it does deal a huge, insane amount of damage, especially with combining with Fetish Sycophant, because then you just have a massive army of fetishes behind you shooting blow darts. The thing to note is, if you're going to use that build, it's best to use Splinters or Snake Dart, because the fetishes don't actually use the rune. They shoot a vanilla poison dart. They don't actually have the rune that you have. So if you're shooting Snake, they're not going to shoot snakes. They're just going to shoot a regular dart. If you're shooting Splinters, they won't actually shoot 3, but you're shooting 3, so they're shooting pretty fast. So any of the other ones, it's almost a waste to use if you're going to use that one. If they don't, you don't.
I have to disagree about the fetishes, because the whole current pet build is you use Carnivals because they shoot snakes at them. They get the rune effect.
They don't. That's not true. They don't actually get the rune effect. They might have changed that at some point, but they don't. Currently, as far as I know, they do not get the rune effect
Huh.
on cards.
Alright. Well, anyways, Fetish Army. Fetish Ambush. You obviously know that Fetish rune's better than me because I don't play Witch Doctor that much. But it changed the damage from physical to cold. Does that help at all with the extra slow CC, or is it still
I'm not 100% as to why they're doing that exactly. I'm not seeing the application with that. The only thing I could think of is adding, an element because I believe the Witch Doctor does benefit a little bit from cold. I think there might be a legendary item that does that, but off the top of my head, I can't actually think of any real huge reason as to change that um, to that damage type.
big nerf in the passive skills. Circle of Life. It reduced from 30 to 15%, so of that chance of summoning a zombie dog is halved now, already at a low percentage. I don't know if I can agree with that, that nerf, but I guess they can do it, since with the addition of Hellfire Amulet, you can just roll to get Circle of Life and then just use your 3 passives.
I would actually, have to agree with that, because for one, like in my build, for example, if I ran abilities that would allow me to summon zombie dogs, because I can have 6 out, I would almost always have those 6 out. They would almost never die, because you can actually, there's so many different abilities that allow you to chance summon a zombie dog. For example, you see on there Mass Confusion, Evolution, summon a zombie dog. I believe Sacrifice has its own summon a zombie dog chance. There's, let me think, there's Big Bag Voodoo has a room that has a chance to summon a zombie dog. There's a couple of different ones that there's a chance to summon a zombie dog, and if you're running all of those, if one of your zombie dogs dies, it's almost instantaneously going to come back after it dies because of all the chances. So they're reducing that because pet build is a powerful build right now. If you throw on the right runes and passives, you can use those zombie dogs and tank for a long time.
Well, I'm going to completely skip over.
Not to mention the fact that you can sacrifice and explode all of your zombie dogs, which probably should be the quick next thing we go over, is the fact that you can now sacrifice one zombie dog at a time, which is kind of really powerful, if I do say so myself. And they're thrown to your cursor, so it's actually way easier to destroy them. And if you're wearing the Tall Man's Finger, the damage is tripled. So all of these changes are just incredibly huge, which they're compensating by decreasing the chance to summon one. Because if they didn't do that, Sack Dog build would just be basically the only build to run if you're on Witch Doctor. I wouldn't see another build you needed to run. Carnivals would easily fall to second because the amount of zombie dogs you would be summoning and just throwing at them, especially if you're wearing Tall Man's Finger. You could just basically, unless you got really unlucky, you could just continuously throw zombie dogs. Not to mention some of the runes you can put on zombie dogs to soak up damage for you. The combination is pretty insane.
Well, I'm going to skip wizards because wizards are pretty much, if you're paying attention to patch notes on Diablo at all, and even on this show, for people who aren't going to do it, I will link in the description where you can check out this patch, obviously, because that's what I should do. But I'm going to skip them, and you can check them out for Barbarian Wizards, since we didn't talk about them. And move on to items. Now, what I like about the fact that about these items is that they're adding a new legendary consumable, which is really nice, and then they're changing a lot. I want to highlight 2 items in specific: Death Diggers and Angel Hair Braid. Death Diggers now have not on top of their normal 1 or 2 magic properties, and then have a large amount of just of just stuff to do, right? They're a very versatile non-set. They're just a very versatile non-set item. That's the best way you can look at it. But now all resources generators deal 80 to 100% more damage. So Crusaders hammers, barbarians frenzy, cleave, monks, demon, and everyone except for the witch doctor benefits from death diggers. And I think that death diggers are actually going to be sought out now rather than just trashed, which is I see a lot of people just trashing the item. And Angel Hairbraid for Crusaders. It's ridiculous because it's a belt. It not only ignored durability loss, it adds a lot of stuff. It adds, strength, all resist 3 random properties in life. It now adds 2 punish to gain the effect of all runes, which punish is a major Crusader, item, skill, just due to the fact that the generator itself is amazing. So you combo Death Figures into just Angel Hairbraid, and you're literally sitting there with more damage than what Crusaders had before. Even with the hammer build nerf, the punish is now a thing to watch. What do you think?
Well, first I'd like to point out that Diggers actually it can be benefited by the Witch Doctor. Not quite as much as other classes, but you have mana darts, which are mana, so there is some application there, just not quite as efficient as other classes, because it's not one of his main runes to use. Moving on to Angel Hair, Punish gaining effect of all runes, that is ridiculous. Punish is the ability that I use on my Crusader primarily. So, gaining all runes is generally something that's kind of insane for an ability to have. It's just instantaneously having all runes. And then Eternal Union, I think we already talked a little bit about that. Increasing Phalanx avatars, that's going to further increase the Phalanx build. That's another big one. And then I'd also like to point out Ball Lightning traveling at 50% speed. That's actually kind of interesting because for a while there, Ball Lightning was one of the only builds to really use on Demon Hunter. You had some various discipline spending abilities to keep yourself safe, and then you just use Ball Lightning until you ran out of hatred, and Ball Lightning did massive amounts of damage. Because how its damage works is it deals a tick of damage as long as it's passing through an enemy. So traveling at 50% speed is going to actually double the amount of damage that it's going to use. So that's kind of interesting.
But it's also it's more of a neutral change because with a skill that moves faster, and with no CC on it, it gives the enemy more time to get to you.
Well, while that is true, if you're playing Demon Hunter correctly, getting to you is not really something that people do. You just run Vault Tumble, so you just fire Ball Lightning in their general direction. As soon as you think that you get close enough to you, then look at you, bunny, you vault away and continue firing your Ball Lightning until you run out of hatred, which, if you're playing right, you want to use a Ball Lightning build, you shouldn't run out of hatred for quite a while. And on top of that entire time when they're trying to get to you, they're going to be passing through some Ball Lightnings, and since they're moving half the speed, they're staying there twice the amount of time, doing twice the amount of damage, and as far as I know, Demon Hunters do quite a bit of damage, so that's a huge increase. Yeah. And quick back to the Punish, having all runes, now that I'm thinking about what some of the runes do, that is kind of a huge deal. Specifically with the fact that, one, they're increasing the life regeneration effects, and importance and priority of life regeneration. So if you go through the runes, one, you have a explosive rune, huge deal, deals some fire damage, and you have an increased attack speed rune. Again, that's all right for Crusaders. It depends on what your build is. Then we get to Rebirth, which is kind of really important for the next patch if they do what they say they're doing, because it gives you life regeneration whenever you block. So, that increased life regeneration, that's kind of important. The fact that you have that on top of all the other ones. And moving down, you have Retaliate, which basically gives you an extra 140% weapon damage as holy to the attacker, and that's kind of nice because Crusaders generally are dealing holy damage. And then my personal favorite rune with it is Fury, which increases your critical hit chance. So really the two ones to focus on heavily is the fact that you get, not only do you get life regeneration, but you also get crit hit chance, both on the same one if you have that. So you're getting increased block, increased crit, increased life regeneration, and increased damage, all from one thing. Because attack speed, crit hit chance, those are two things that single target, that's going to deal some damage. And then you have block chance and life regeneration. So all in one, this ability is giving you two different ways to increase your defensive capabilities and two different ways to increase your offensive capabilities. And it's generating your wrath, per attack, which if you look back, we're getting a legendary increase of damage on resource generators. So this plus, the Depth Diggers plus the Angel Hair Braid, if you have both of those, that's a powerful combination.
Yeah. I really want to highlight something, though. It's called the Shadows Mantle. It's a set for Demon Hunters. They're tweaking it because it wasn't that good. The 4 set and 2 set weren't that good, but now the 2 set was changed so that when you die, instead you cast Smokescreen automatically for free and are healed for 20% life. Now before, if you dropped below a certain amount, you would you cast Smokescreen, and then that can only happen every 30 seconds. Well, with this heal, it can only occur once every 120 seconds, which I think is fair. I think it's fine. But the 4 set bonus is really what people want to look at. Shadow Power lasts forever. You cast Shadow Power and you just sit there. So I can't think of all the runes off the top of my head, which I want to go look at right now, because
I'll go ahead and start from there while you're looking those up. Pretty much Smokescreen, the fact that it not only does it heal you for 20% life, that's 1/4 of your life, that's a significant amount, but automatically casting Smokescreen and healing you for 20% of your life, you think that's like, okay, that's really good. That's like the Unstable Anomaly, I believe, passive on a wizard. I could be correct on that. The rune that if you take fatal damage, you actually heal. It's like that, but if you think about it, this is very powerful for the Demon Hunter, because if you have on the rune that heals you while you're invisible, that's another 15%. And then
Shadow Power doesn't actually make you invisible. Shadow Power, what it does is that it changes your model, but gives you life on hit for 5 seconds.
I'm actually talking about the Smokescreen, the Shadow Mantle set 2 bonus right now.
Oh, gotcha. My bad.
Yeah, it casts Smokescreen. Smokescreen, I believe, has a rune that heals you for 50% life while you're invisible. So if you cast that and automatically heal for 25% of your life, if you play it smart and stay invisible, you can heal 15% of your extra of more life. That's 40% of life. That means you're going back up to half if you're running that rune. Now, I don't know if it just casts a vanilla Smokescreen, if it doesn't include the rune, but if it does, you can do a lot with that. You can really turn a fight around with that. Now, moving on to Shadow Power. Yes, Shadow Power lasts forever. That is a ridiculously powerful ability, because
I have the runes pulled up right now for Shadow Power, and the ones I think people will use the most is Blood Moon, which doubles the amount you get life per hit, because normally it's 8.2k of health per hit, but doubles that, turns it into 16.5, or Shadow Glide, which gives you 30% movement speed while Shadow Power is active. So like rift runs, you're faster, you're on hit, you're literally just killing people. Or you can gloom, actually, now that I think about it, and sit there with the gloom buff that's happening, with that, sit there and gloom and never die, because you're now a tank demon hunter.
Yeah. Basically, if you have that, it's going to make Will of Darkness essentially, pointless to have. But really, if you look at it, Nightbane is probably not also going to be used because it's only for 5 seconds, which means you're going to have to reactivate it to get the effect. So Blood Moon and Gloom are going to be the main ones you're probably going to want to take. Now, like I mentioned way back when, if you're like me, I'm not going to want to be taking damage, period. So while 15% damage taken reduction is nice, I like my life per hit because if I do happen to get hit, I'm just going to get it back up. Because I'm going to be always moving and attacking, moving and attacking, moving and attacking. So that double life per hit is probably the one I would use. It's pretty invaluable considering that it also, if you remember, buffing that because of that dexterity change and the health flow change. So that's going to be a higher priority stat to have. So this change is pretty big. It's a pretty important, huge change for the Demon Hunter.
I some of the some of the other like seasonal legendaries and stuff. They're not that good. I mean, I like the bottomless potion, but it's there. The Krelm stuff, it's not that good. I mean, the bracers are really good because it gains you immunity to knockback and stuns. So, like we were saying before, at the very beginning, tank monks, they become incredibly more overpowered than they already are. Barbarian's new one-handed weapon I like. It makes the hammer build, the Thor build, back before way when D3 was in its infinite, makes hammer builds kind of good since it has a 20 to 30% chance to summon an ancient and a hammer barbarian. You spam it, so you're essentially making a zoo build on barbarians, which I think is interesting. Crusaders, the new legendary shield that's coming out. I enjoy that. The Phalanx one especially, you summon twice as many avatars, and it applies to all runes. And then Crusader Shield, you remove the cooldown of Condemn, and then Condemn costs 40 Wrath, so you can essentially spam your Condemn.
Which is pretty insane. Going back to that Phalanx change, that's also pretty insane because, like I said, they are trying to buff that build, it appears, because it is Phalanx is a pretty underused rune. In fact, I think it was the most least used rune in D3 whenever Crusaders first came out because there's literally nothing benefit from it. But now they have all these legendary items and passes and such that actually, give you some sort of a benefit from using Phalanx. That it's starting to become more and more of a viable build. And now we have this shield that not only does it summon twice as many, but it applies to all rune variants. So if you have Bodyguard on, that's a huge buff to having. You have 4 instead of just 2, and those are a powerful ally to have by your side if you're running that build.
I want to highlight Bowman with that shield. Bowman with the shield.
Oh yes, Bowman with that shield is also quite insane. That's for more if you're running sort of the tanky Crusader build. You have that on and you're running the Phalanx build, like the tanky build. You can have those as sort of your DPS dealers as you're soaking up some of the damage, or just add a huge amount of DPS to your Phalanx build because that is quite a few. It's quite a few arrows helping your enemy.
Let me see. Demon Hunter getting a new bow. Bola shot 15 to 20% chance of explosion. Can pull all enemies within 24 yards. So, essentially, from the point of explosion, you can actually pull people away. So if those sprinters, those suicide guys do get close, a quick bola could pull them away and be the difference between life and death.
Yeah, that is quite nice because you will be, kiting with the witch doctor. So having an ability that sees them somewhere away from you. I'm sorry, demon hunter. Thank you. Somewhere away from you. That is, that's sort of invaluable, especially since it's just a passive. You're not really creating anything in your build other than you have to use bola to have it work, which isn't. It's not really a bad hatred generator. Bola strike.
No, it's not. It can definitely set you up for some. Monks are getting a new gloves. Increase the duration of sweeping wind to 1 minute.
That's really huge.
60 seconds of sweeping winds. Pretty much infinite tornadoes.
Yeah, really, if you're playing Monk right, that's... As soon as you get out into the fray, you should almost never have sweeping winds off. Sweeping wind off. All you have to do is run Thunderclap, and you can just, bounce right to the target you need to hit, and you're right back in combat, sweeping wind stays. Before, I believe it was 10, 15 seconds and it was gone?
6 seconds, just overall. The vortex lasts 6 seconds.
Oh, 6 seconds, wow. So, basically impossible to keep it up, unless you're constantly casting it, or, you're in the middle of a huge battlefield, say Act 3, and you're just bouncing every single target you can find. It's still, a couple of little waves in there that you might have to recast it and build it back up. And for a DPS monk, Sweeping Wind is definitely one of the higher DPS abilities that you would use, especially creating a lot. Those tornadoes are pretty powerful. So that's kind of a huge deal. Instead of having to recast it and build it back up.
I would like to point out, Witch Doctors are so good right now, they didn't even think about putting seasonal legendaries in.
That is correct. Witch Doctors are the best class.
There's a new Wizard Wand. Removes the cooldown of Teleport, and now Teleport costs 25 arcane power.
Yes, I was actually just about to point that out. The cost to 25 arcane power is actually not bad, because removing the cooldown kind of makes it insane. Because as you know, the main teleport that I see most people use is Wormhole, and that basically has destroyed keyboards in the past, really, because of the amount of button mashing you have on your hotkey for teleport. Because for 3 seconds you can cast it essentially as much time. Oh, I'm sorry, they changed it to 1 additional time. But yeah, removing the cooldown on it, Wormhole is basically coming back to where you can just cast it as long as you have arcane power. Wormhole, for those of you that don't know, Wormhole used to be after you cast Wormhole for 1 or 2 more seconds, you could cast it as much as you want for free. So basically, people would button mash the teleport hotkey and teleport 5 or 6 times out of harm's way. They nerfed it to where you have 3 seconds, but you can only cast it 1 more time, so it's a double teleport. And it looks like you still have the cost there too. So, however, removing that cooldown essentially brings back a Wormhole teleport. It'll cost a little bit more arcane power. So there's that. And then, of course, there's Calamity, which I think is kind of ridiculous because you can stun using your teleport. So as long as you have quite a bit of arcane power, you can do a little bit of damage and stun lock them. If you're using your arcane regen and arcane resource generators correctly, you can stun lock them quite a bit because it is for 1 second.
Alright, well, that'll actually conclude the video because that's the rest of it's just monster user interface, stuff like that, and I'll link that in the description if you really want to go check it out. But oh no, it doesn't, because we haven't talked about rifts yet. I apologize. Yes, we need to talk about.
Yeah, that's kind of an important change.
Yeah, seasons and rifts. I want to talk about greater rifts and stuff like that first. with the implement of this, what we've been talking about here, as you've probably heard, my co-caster CAD, my co-video user or whatever you want to call him, CAD. He was talking about how they're buffing it. They are buffing on hit, life regeneration, and well, that's about it. And skills and items that give that to make them more viable, because they would notice that as people were going through rifts and at later levels, and I'm guilty of it, and Cat is too. You actively seek out those health globes, because health globes give what at minimum for us right now 20k HP almost per health.
Oh yeah, the health globes give you at least if you have a little bit, if you're a carry, you're not going to have a huge amount of, I guess they're calling it toughness now, I'm so used to it being before ROS, I'm sorry, rambling. You're not going to have a huge amount of life, of vitality. It's an important skill to have, but it's not huge compared to like a tank. So, if a carry picks up a health globe or two, and maybe pops a pot, you're probably close to back to full health. So health globes are ridiculous. Not to mention, some of those classes had passes that had benefits from picking up health globes. The wizard had regenerated arcane power or gave you extra damage when you picked up health globe. Demon Hunter regenerated, I think you regenerated some discipline or something like that if you picked up a health globe. So health globes were really life on hit, and life regeneration was almost something you didn't even need, because as long as you could deal out the damage to kill small waves of small weed creatures, you could just walk around, pick up a couple of health globes, and then deal with the bigger elites. Once you've regenerated your health and you have it in a more manageable situation.
I'm right now on my character page on Diablo3.com. I want to highlight the item Reaper's Wraps. This item was a major consideration also for that, due to the fact that Reaper's Wraps return a certain amount, up to 30% of your primary resource, 30 or 40% of your primary resource at max cap. And due to me having the plans for it at the blacksmith, so I forged it. I know that as of right now, if I see a health globe, I will immediately turn and pick it up. I will stop attacking to pick it up, because I'm a casting. I'm throwing things at people. I'm throwing my hammers. I'm using Dominion. I'm doing all this stuff. And so I see this health globe there, and I'm like, I want to restore more so I can do more. So I know that's an item that's going to be affected by this, because the health globes don't drop as much in these rifts. They are they lowered the greater rifts health globe drop as you get along, due to the fact that they're buffing life on hit and life regeneration. So you won't see as many health globes. So Reaper's Wraps is actually getting is not, it's like kind of getting hit by the shrapnel of that nerf.
I would agree. Now what could happen is they could change that passive, or they could just buff it to make it so whenever you do get a health globe drop, it is closer to the same efficiency of picking up a health globe. I would like to mention, it's a huge change, because if you think something that regenerates that resource, if you're on a monk and you're in the middle of a fray, and all the changes to the monk have made it probably a little bit more tanky, but more importantly, he does way more damage. You're dealing with damage. Your sweeping winds is up for a minute, so you're plowing through mobs of weaker demons, and you're picking up health globes left and right. You're basically
immortal.
Basically, yeah. You can almost not die. And if for some odd reason you start to die, you can cast Blinding Light, which, if you don't remember, new passive gives you bonus damage, and it blinds them. So now you're killing them even faster. And you pop another health globe out, and your resources back up. So Blinding Light costs practically nothing, because you picked up a health globe and you saved yourself. So just the combination with the health globes and some of the legendary items, there's next to no need of life on hit and life regeneration. As long as you had enough vitality and defenses to sustain yourself while somebody else kills them, or enough damage and get away potential, and get the fuck out potential, all you have to do is wait for a health build.
Alright, there's not, like, leaderboards are coming in, so ladders, ranked rifts, those are things that for the viewers to go look at, but seasons are kind of also what I want to talk about, because, seasons mean that if they're optional, you don't have to go into them. For those who have played WoW and have played PvP, there are that's you know about the seasonal PvP, and you know that there's seasonal armor, which is a lot of those ridiculous things we're talking about, which this first season was obviously attached, because the one I'm looking for is the Sweeping Winds belt, is the Sweeping Wind item, because it literally it's gloves. I need a good pair of gloves. I'm gonna get that. Make Sweeping Winds last for 1 minute. That's amazing. But Season 2, those gloves could be buffed to 3 minutes, or they could change to Sweeping Winds does every elemental damage in all the element damage, or Sweeping Wind gets all its runes. Each season, items not only will either go up or down in their levels and scales, it will go. Their effects will change, and I'm interested to see how the seasons work out, especially for barbarians, witch doctors, crusaders, the top 3 classes right now.
Generally, the legendary items get some form of a buff. I don't normally nerf things too much. That's why whenever you haven't played for a month or two, and you come back in and originally your character was geared pretty well, if not one of the top tiers. You come back in and his gear is mediocre at best. So Blizzard does a good job of updating their stuff and keeping it going to where you still got to find that new stuff to be top of the line geared up. So my guess is it would get some sort of a buff, but that's just based on previous buffs. Previous patches. We don't know how it's going to do in the new patch. Because you have to consider the fact that if it is lasting for a minute, and you can have it up for basically as long as you want, as long as you stay on top of it, all of the other changes to monks, if their damage is getting increased by way too much, since they're buffing and thinking they need to compensate, and they really don't, that means they're going to be unkillable, deal all the damage, and their Sweeping Winds is never going to die down. That's just, it's overpowered. So we'll see what happens. We'll have to wait and see how big of a change dodge chance into armor / resistance is going to be, and how it's going to affect the game as far as survivability.
Alright. Well, that will actually wrap it up this time. There is nothing else we need to cover, but unless you have something.
No. Play more Witch Doctor.
Message from CAD. Play more Witch Doctor. So yeah, this is M. Holcomb and CAD signing out.
Oh yeah, one other thing, Blizzard, please add skill trees. Skill trees was pretty awesome in D2. But that's all I have to add.
Alright, well, this is M. Holcomb and CAD signing out. We will be recording episode 2 on the next one of the 3 major games that we're covering. And that is Diablo 3, League of Legends, and Smite. Whichever one of those 3 games happens to have a patch notes out, we will cover them in episode 2. So these things are going to be pretty much far and in between. Hopefully not too far in between. What?
Hopefully.
But yeah, we hope to talk to you again. Yeah, goodbye.